I think now it's becoming very crucial for businesses to track their international shipments, speak to their suppliers, manage all the inventory management, manage their inventory and cash flow under the same platform where they can have better visibility. And data is so important. You have no idea how many big brands we're talking. And probably one of the departments they care the least was international shipping and inventory management. Now they're like, oh my God, we have to find a solution to that. We need to hire an expert.
Hello and welcome to the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US, a podcast in which we explore the mind-bending world of global supply chains, covering topics such as automation, innovation, unique identity, and more. I'm your co-host, Reid.
And I'm Liz.
And welcome to the show. Hello, everyone. I hope that you're having a great day. Our guest is Burak Yolga, and he's the co-founder of Forceget. And today we talk about logistics, international freight, online selling, physical warehousing, efficiencies, logistics problems and solutions, and everything in between. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you do too. Let's jump right into the episode. Burak, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you can squeeze us in your busy days here. But before we jump into this inventory management and FBA world and everything like that, can you just, for our listeners, just give us a quick background on yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to thank to my mom and her friends who subscribe my YouTube channel.
I love it. We've been on for 30 seconds. This is going to be the most listened to podcast yet because we finally have humans talking about their moms. We'd be nowhere without our moms.
Absolutely. Yep. And, almost 40 to 45% of our company is women. So they're so driven. They're so amazing. Our marketing team, we have some great ladies in our operation team. Our China team has like 6 ladies. That's a great thing to share, the life as well as the business difficulties and challenges. And so that's why the moms are very important. Wives, girlfriends, very important.
So your background, how did you get started with this? Who is Forceget?
So I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey. I did my bachelor degrees, international business in Istanbul, Turkey. And then I did my MBA in France, close to Paris. It's a business school called Supdeco. That's when I was like 22 years old. First time I left Istanbul. That was my first time traveling abroad. Didn't really speak good English. And that's where I realized that the world has no borders. I met so many cool people, international background, 40, 50 different students. And everyone back then, they had a dream to travel to US and get a summer job and etc. And I had a dream to go to Asia. Like China was something that I really wanted to travel. So I found an internship in world's largest golf resort. I had a customer service background back in Turkey, and there were like 14,000 people working in that hotel. I was going to stay like for 6 months and come back to, do a couple of months backpack trip in Southeast Asia, go back to Turkey, get a job in a corporate company. And at the end of the 3rd month in the internship, I want to start doing something by myself in China. I got a job in a Chinese American company in the sales department. I started working there a couple of years, and then I met a lot of people in the events, trade shows. That's why I really loved living in China. Back then, China GDP was great. Like I'm talking about 2013, 14, 15, double digit every year growth. The world economy is booming. Oil and gas prices are very high. All the countries like, Russia, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they have billions of dollars of projects worldwide, includes Africa and stuff. So I started sourcing products. That was my first business, one-man show. And I started a B2B brand back in China, 2015, 16. And then 2017, my clients started asking me, hey, you're doing a great job for us for the sourcing. Can you also help us with international shipment? I said, sure, why not? That's where I started the Forceget International Logistics in Hong Kong and China. And 5 years ago, I decided to move to US, Miami, Florida now. That's where I'm based out of. Last 3 years, my sister became my co-founder, and she's in charge of software and finance. Mostly, I'm more in the sales, marketing, and operations. So we are running the Forceget International Supply Chain and Logistics last 3 years together. We grew like almost 300% in the last 2 years.
You have such a cool background all over the world. It's just really cool. So getting into the guts of it, I want to talk to you about inventory management and in all of the work that you do with shipping. Why is inventory management so important? Like, what are the key components of that? And is there a play for businesses to have like a more streamlined inventory management program? Because there's so many costs, there's so many things that businesses could be focusing on. Why or why not is inventory management one of them?
If we were having this conversation in 21, 22, we would be talking about only revenues. Everybody was like selling a lot of products online. The business grew really fast for e-commerce Amazon sellers. People start bringing a lot of inventory. We had all that supply chain issues and stuff. But at the end of the day, no one really cared about the profit because everybody was making a lot of money. And last year with the inflation and seeing the decrease in the demand, a lot of companies start focusing on profit and how they can optimize their cash flow because of the inflation. Interest rates got higher, as well as borrowing money was much harder. So that's why a lot of companies, especially towards the end of the year, last 2023, I'm not an economist, but I'm talking to our customers pretty much every day, our sales team every day. We're doing a lot of demo with new potential customers. We're onboarding. Most of the question they're asking about how they can optimize their cash flow, which is directly relevant to their supply chain. Everything is related. It's an entire life cycle, which was 2 years ago, almost 90 days to manufacture a full container product in China, shipping to US, selling, getting the money back from Amazon or Walmart, Shopify, any other online platform. Now it's almost like 150 to 180 days. And until 3 months ago, things were better with the transit time, with the international logistics, with what's going on in the Red Sea right now. We see a lot of problems with the departure dates, roughly 10 to 12 days delays. The transit times, container prices went up almost 100 to 150%, depending on the destination they're actually shipping the products. And UK, Europe is the one affected the most. US is still better, but then we had the Panama Channel. So I think now it's becoming very crucial for businesses to track their international shipments, speak to their suppliers, manage all the inventory management, manage their inventory and cash flow under the same platform where they can have better visibility. And data is so important. And last 1 year, a lot of companies, they're talking about AI, where they can actually use the AI in the forecasting, which they need to connect the manufacturing time, the shipping time. If you're selling on Amazon, I'm sure something that you realized is the checking times are extremely longer compared to 2 years ago. So whenever you deliver a full container to Amazon, normally it would take them 7 to 10 days fully checking that entire inventory. Now it can take up to 40 to 45 days. So if your inventory does not become available, then you can't basically sell it. If you can't sell it, you can't get your own money from Amazon, so you can't order. So everything is connected to each other. And a lot of companies, they don't consider that. And you have no idea how many big brands we're talking. And probably one of the departments they care the least was international shipping and inventory management. Now they're like, oh my God, we have to find a solution to that. We need to hire an expert.
Isn't it funny, though, how everything is connected and you're talking to people and you're seeing trends happen? I remember when I was much younger, back in the 90s, and the dot-com boom was going on, and I was selling IT solutions, and it was 7 days a week. You could work 100 days a week if they'd allow you. It was just so much. And then all of a sudden, one day I walked into work, and my boss was like, hey, how you doing? Is it going well? And I'm like, it's over. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, there's no more VC luncheons. There's no more venture capital luncheons. The money's all dried up. It was my first time getting exposed to this stuff, right? But that's what you're kind of talking about with, we had the pandemic and all of a sudden everything went gangbusters and money was cheap. I mean, we're talking about 2% loans at the time, right?
You're like, get now and start paying a year later.
Yeah. Like, don't even worry about it. You're going to make money hand over fist. And now everyone's like, oh my gosh, interest rates are so high, 7 and 8%. And I'm like, 7 and 8%. I've seen it go to 12%. But when you're used to 2 and 3%, 7 and 8% is more than a 100% increase. Your costs literally double. We had a conversation, my kids and I, they're starting to become drivers and they're like, oh, I want to buy this car. And Dad, what about that car? I'm like, well, when I looked at that car, the financing was 3% and I can afford the payment. Now the financing is 7%. I'm not spending $1,500 a month on a car, but that's what you're at. And you're talking about international. I feel that it was always a microcosm or just a niche field and space in the past. And now we're all realizing like it's a small world. We're all interconnected. Like there's a lot going on. So I said a lot. I got on my soapbox. Liz, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Only one rolling of the eye there that I saw. See, let's get back to Burak, you and your experience and trying to help out our listeners here. When it comes to inventory management, especially with this international aspect of it, What are some of the common challenges that all companies are facing? And it could be just as simple like once they start focusing on it, it changes their world, or things that sneaks up, like just some common trends that you see day in and day out. And maybe you're
I think
surprised by it, maybe you're not.
I think one thing is I actually started to read a book. I was always telling like I'm really busy. I don't have time to read the books. Now I'm kind of prioritizing that. And then what I realize is like you need to really break down. It's called Atomic Habits. I'm sure people heard about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's really great because when you look at a big picture, it is very hard to understand like where this actual cost coming in. It's very hard to save that cost, right? You look and you're importing a nightstand, the landing cost is $25, and then you're selling it on Amazon for like $125, 40% is FBA fees, and at the end, after the PPC and everything, you have $35, and then you're like, okay, I used to make 100%, now I can only make 50%. So how do I save money? How do I manage my inventory better? I think everything is looking at the profit side, and then profit side comes from breaking down the entire process. And really actually it's funny because 2 years ago, I think inventory management or supply chain was not even a part of the conversation. Everybody's talking about the PPC, everybody's talking about the fancy stuff, affiliate marketing. Amazon was coming out with a lot of new programs or new announcement about the marketing side. Now, Accelerate 2023 was the year the main screen, the main stage was talking about supply chain, because that's what Amazon knows. And Amazon invested billions of dollars their supply chain. The other day, we were supposed to deliver a full container to Memphis. It's Memphis 1. So we received an email that they're shutting down the entire warehouse. They're closing permanently. And then they're like, they need to reroute the container. And we're like, why they didn't tell us that like a month ago? So a lot of companies, they invested in a lot of money to other things, but now it's time to like break down where the main costs come in. Is it the sourcing cost? Is it the import tariffs and tax? How much duty are you paying? Can you redefine your product, maybe material? We had a client, they are ordering a lot of large amount of bamboo laundry basket. And that product has 25% off duty because made in China. So they were asking us, hey, how can we avoid the tax? We're like, you cannot. You have two options. Number one, you need to change the material of the product, or you need to look for a different country to manufacture it, right? They're like, okay. They went to look at Thailand, Malaysia, because it doesn't have the China tariff. And they're like, no, we're very happy with our supplier. But look, you know what we decided? We're going to change that from bamboo to cotton because it's even, let's say, this and that. So we're like, okay, that's great. So there's so many actually things that you can break down, all the way from what is your import export HTS code? What is the product made of? You know, if you're selling on Amazon, a lot of companies, they don't really looking at the aged inventory charges, or they don't looking at their product is in which tier of the FBA fees. If you can actually reduce the size of your box, like maybe half inch, maybe you'll be paying 15% less. So these are something that we are always like trying to educate companies, be telling people. And imagine if you could save literally like 7-8% from a product FBA fees, then if you have 50 product in your catalog, let's say 10 of them or 20 of them are eligible to resizing that, you could be saving more than $10,000 for like 20 products. Sometimes you see those like Instagram and Facebook posts, save thousands of dollars. I'm not doing that, but it's literally correct. So you need to really break down, where is your main cost coming from? Is it the fulfillment fees? Is it the FBA? We have so many clients that they are half offering FBA and half FBM. So they need to test. So when it comes to managing inventory, it's not actually how many products you order. So it has a lot of connections. So you need to look at the big picture first. You need to get closer, break down everything, your supplier relationship, how much you're paying to them. Are you paying them 30%? Can you do 10% deposit down or 15? Do you need to pay the balance payment before the shipment, or you can pay it against bill of lading? So it gives you 30 days to pay the remaining part. Maybe you could negotiate and ask them to increase the price 3%, but you pay them 30 days later. So it's actually smarter than go and borrow from the bank money. They really need to sit down and talk to their team and have the full visibility in their entire supply chain, because managing inventory is very difficult right now. But I think if you're looking at the correct things, if you break down and see where your main pain point, then I think it's sort of fixable.
You started by saying You need to break down that whole process. And there's so many variables in that whole process, and really trying to understand where your levers are in each one and then put that puzzle together. It sounds like it can be super daunting, but also have a lot of benefit on the other side.
Yeah, the people also can start seeing where did they overpaid in the past. Was it the employee maybe mistake, or like the workers maybe mistake, the factory maybe supplier? And it's very interesting because the other day we were doing this research. If you sell on Amazon, and I know that most of the listeners are probably selling on Amazon here, you download the brand analytics reports in your category. You can see how many percent of the sellers are from China, how many percent of them from the US and registered. And you can really see the competition, and you can see if your supplier is one of the direct sellers or not. There's a way to do that, actually. So you can see if it's a good supplier for you to work or not. I've seen so many cases that the suppliers see that the customers start selling really good on Amazon. They start selling them directly. They start increasing the customer's price slowly so they can have the leverage on Amazon directly. So I've seen so many different things. So I think that's why you really need to manage the relationship with your supplier. Maybe you might have an exclusivity. Maybe you might have face-to-face meetings. I don't know. That's the break-in part point, I think. Where do you see an issue in your business, and focus on that?
Yep.
Liz, before you jump on to the next question, you mentioned it just as a hint, and I don't know if folks picked up on it, but you talked about so many things to save. And you said it's not looking at your inventory size, right? Like quantity of products. Like I got X number of this and Y number of that. Maybe I should reduce this a little bit. You talked about all these other things, looking at different suppliers, different locations, different materials, different product sizes. Right. And I just really think that a lot of times folks, we just go into the macro level stuff, but you're saying that there's exponential layering of things that can get you this. And even that 3% on bill of lading. And this is very creative. So thank you for sharing all that.
No problem. I think it's daily challenges that we are having our customers, and we need to be flexible. That's where we're trying to have our mindset in the company. Like whenever we have a challenge, every day we're going to have a challenge. Every day, the bigger company gets, we have more challenge, but we want to be like practical to help people. Eventually, I really think that these people, they have savings, they maybe save money, they get loan from the bank, and they need to like optimize things. And how they can optimize, we always like to give companies, our friends, customers, options. If you do this option, this is the result. If you use this option, maybe you have longer transit time, but you have a cheaper option. Like, what is your priority? I think people need to focus on their priority, whether it is saving time, expanding to a new marketplace. If you're selling on Amazon, have you ever considered about selling on Canada, UK, and Germany? You could use the leverage of having the same supplier, same product. You could increase the number of product that you're ordering. You can decrease the price. You can negotiate, but you can start selling in different marketplaces. And it's literally transferring the reviews, your rating. The PPC cost is much cheaper in the UK and Canada. Maybe the demand is lower, but what's your priority? Do you want to sell 5,000 units in a month, or you want to sell additional 1,000 units, but maybe you make as much as profit you're making with the 4,000, 5,000 units? That's why profit is the important word, I think, today's word.
We would be remiss if we didn't bring standards into the conversation. So how do standards, from your perspective, come into play in inventory management? Do they improve the inventory management process at all from your view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every company's needs are very different. And I think suppliers are also learning this a lot. I got so many questions like, hey, is China changing? Should we look for a different marketplace? Should we source from Vietnam? Should we source from South America, Mexico? You know, when we had the COVID times, it was 2 years ago, and a lot of companies, they try to switch the suppliers in Mexico and other closer places. But then they realize that exporting from Mexico is very complicated compared to China. So even the transportation cost from Mexico by truck to Kansas is like $8,000 versus 6 months ago from China to Kansas was like $5,000. So I think companies need to understand what they are going through. And then if it is their full focus is the inventory management and standardizing those processes, the product quality, labeling, the barcodes, could be anything. I think this year is the important year to either make themselves differentiated in the different marketplaces or in their focus location, or maybe they'll be like, okay, this year is going to be like very challenging. I think this year is very open for improvements, especially beginning of the year. We are facing a lot of challenges with the international logistics and supply chain. I think managing the inventory, this could be a great opportunity for the growth for a lot of companies, maybe adding new products, expand to new marketplaces, especially within Amazon. There are a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective on this. You're getting me thinking about in good times you plan for bad, and bad times you plan for good, and times are always changing. You know, you stated it right from the very beginning that a couple of years ago it was a lot different. And it's amazing to me how fast these things move. Like, oh, that'll never happen. Like, okay, I've been through 5 recessions already, and another one will come again. And it's just this circle of life type of scenario.
Yeah, actually, when we had this container prices went from $2,000 to $20,000 2 years ago, which was really expensive, insane. That's one of the reasons why the landing cost got very expensive. Maybe it's even part of the reason why we had such a high inflation. But at the same time, when it went down, everybody was like, oh, it will never go back to $5,000, $6,000. And then in 1 month, it did.
1 month.
And I really think that companies need to be ready for anything right now. And they should always have plan B, plan C. So if you want to source a different product from different marketplace, yes, you should have a ready plan. And there's a good saying, don't put all your eggs in the same basket. It's extremely important for the managing inventories, managing the supply chain, managing the international logistics, tracking the transit times. When we were talking about breaking down the production time or your entire supply chain, really a lot of people avoiding to understand the transit times, the checking times, the fulfillment times, last mile delivery. Eventually, if your customer receives the product in a good condition, on time, they have so many options right now. It's just very hard to please the client. I mean, imagine you, when was the last time you ordered something, you open it on, you're like, this is not good, let me return this. Or you order something, you loved it. I'm sure when you love it, you go and tell people, hey, look, between the conversation, and it could be suddenly growing so fast. So that's why things change very fast. And we had a client that they actually had this amazing TikTok, which I'm not in TikTok.
The viral stuff is real.
They go viral, and then they sold out like 200,000 units.
I was listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast earlier last week, and they were talking about the Stanley mugs. And it was a TikTok piece, 2 of them. This company in 2020, their revenues were $75 million. In 2023, they were $750 million from viral changes and a couple little directional changes. But this company's been around for 100 years.
I know, yeah.
It's just wow.
Don't you think that's also reaching that $700 million? It's a success of supply chain, managing the inventory, cash flow. It's incredible. I mean, if you want to like double your revenue, it's very hard. Imagine these companies are like sometimes doubling 5 times. That's very, very impressive.
Liz and I were talking, and we wanted to kind of get your opinion on the digitization or digitalization. That was another word that used to be used. I've been hearing about digitization since the 90s. People a little bit older than me have probably been hearing it since the 60s. It's like one of these things that just kind of keeps happening. But what's the advice you give companies today? Because very candidly, I've seen digitization be from, hey, I'm writing on this piece of paper to putting it in an Excel spreadsheet that's in digital form. Well, guess what? It's just in digital form. It's the exact same process, so not a big shift, a little bit easier to search on than hard files in the basement.
It's hard to change people's habits. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
But there's a fact that only the supply chain and international logistics in 2023 received almost $55 to $60 billion investment for digitalization. I'm talking about companies like DHL, UPS, even investing into electric distribution trucks. Like Amazon made a deal with Rivian, which is California-based EV company that they start producing EVs for like Amazon as well as AT&T. So I think now it's a tangible thing. It's like you can touch that recently. You can see it, what is going on. And then last year I was in NRF, National Retail Federation's show in New York. All the brands and fashions companies are coming. They spent so much money to make sure that people order things in fashion industry that it's decreasing their return rates, because they could save millions of dollars if they could drop their return rates like 1%, 2%. It's one of the biggest expense that they have. So they start making the mirrors that you can 3D fit your dress or I don't know, whatever you're buying. So I think like digitalization has 2 points. One from the consumer side. So the companies, let's say from Stanley, they have a point how they can actually promote the product, they can sell more, but then how they can manage their supply chain more digital. And companies like Maersk, companies like DHL, FedEx, they're investing literally billions of dollars to have a better tracking for the customers, better visibility for their own team. So in Forceget, we created a software where people can track their shipments online. We connect to the Seller Central account. We want to give them full visibility of the production, international shipments, reimbursements, returns, basically the entire cycle of the cash flow in the Amazon world. And I really, whenever we have a call with our customers, the biggest issue they have, what they're facing is they have a team in China, Philippines, let's say Pakistan, Europe, US, in New Jersey, in California. By the time one of the office wakes up, the other one is sleeping. So they cannot really make a decision in the New Jersey office, 4 p.m., you're having an important meeting with your marketing team. You're talking about your PPC budget, but you don't really know when your shipment is going to check in. So you cannot really decrease your PPC budget, your bidding. You cannot deactivate or activate your coupon. And these all less digital handling or this less digital operation is actually causing you millions of dollars or maybe thousands of dollars, depending on size, because you think that your shipment is going to come to the port in 4 days, but you actually did not talk to your freight forwarder the last 3 days. And they did forget to tell you that your shipment delayed like 10 days due to the weather conditions in China. And then boom.
Or they closed the warehouse that you planned.
Or that. And you didn't know until you asked them. And you cannot ask your freight forwarder every day. And basically you decide to increase your PPC budget because you think that you're going to have inventory in 3 days because you want to boost your sales because you have a lot of new inventories coming and the holiday season is coming. But eventually, 3 days later, after you increase your budget, your ranking, you need to turn off your PPC. Amazon algorithm is, what is going on? This seller looks confused. Let's put their BSR lower than what they were 3 days ago. So I think companies, these are like real stories. And companies, I think, being more aware of this because more and more news, social media channels are talking about this. And I think companies are becoming more interesting in hearing about the options. But again, it's hard to change their habits. And are they going to ever leave that? In some point, yes. But I think new generation is kind of more aware of these issues.
That's very true.
You mentioned the electric truck. Is there anything else like up and coming wise from your perspective in shipping that you see on the horizon that's kind of fun?
Like we see that a solar panel powered container vessel. That's a prototype, but I think that could be something. I think they have like both. I'm not an expert. I can't really remember it, but I remember that they have like a maybe hydrogen fuel, not like actual oil. They're doing a lot of innovation. So when I'm talking about this $55 to $60 billion, it's not only software, it's also hardware. Because eventually these companies, they are getting more and more pressure from the governments, especially in European Union, to be more emission free. They are becoming like more green friendly, which I think that America is a little bit following the Europe in that side. But I think companies will be spending more money on that part, which is a great thing because we really need to protect our environment. And this fast consumption, this fast moving world is damaging the nature, damaging the world. And I think it's very important to be aware of that. One of the biggest, actually, there's a really great event in Las Vegas I go every year. It's called Manifest. It's about digital freight. They talk about all these innovations, and a lot of multinational billion-dollar of companies like Intel or DHL, like both vendor and suppliers, they're coming to that event and they're all talking about how they can work together with their suppliers, their vendors, their customers to optimize the shipment times, the shipping prices, as well as the carbon emission free maybe world. Obviously, there's a cost for that. And if you only want to focus on cheap service or maybe cheap solutions, I think some of the companies like in the past disappeared. I think companies need to understand the importance of the new era, new world, and everything is extremely related. I'm really hoping that people don't think that I'm talking very disconnected, but I'm dealing with this every day, 10 hours, 12 hours of my day. And in some point, some of the conversation we start, even like today, as you know, started from my mom and my YouTube channel, how we end up in the carbon free, I don't know, solar panel container vessel. But the conversations start in one point, and in some point, companies are aware of they have responsibility, but they're sometimes afraid to start acting. So I think in some point, every company will need to do more for both their business and for the nature and the environment. I'm very happy to be part of this generation that we're trying to do something favorable for the digital supply chain and international logistics.
We really appreciate you sharing this with us. And we've touched a lot of different things here with international shipping and logistics and inventory management. You mentioned the solar powered container vessels. I did see that. I was doing some research a couple weeks back and was on YouTube seeing some things, and like, we're putting sails back on ships because the cost of the gas, if you got a 3% increase of efficiencies, you're saving like 40 million, 50 million. You mentioned earlier in the program as we were talking, like if you're going through the Red Sea and you're cutting through one of the shortcuts, or if you have to go around the Horn of Africa, you might have just doubled the price of your product. You've already done the whole, if you paid up front or if you're paying on the back end, it could have a massive impact. You could go from making 100% profit to being in the hole 10 to 20%. There's a lot to consider. Well, we're getting close to the end here. Liz and I always have two questions. And again, I just want to thank you for your time. And
thanks for having me.
You've jumped over so much, and you started this off so great with just giving a shout out to your mom and her friends, which it's just warmed my heart because I lost my mom a few years back, and just so thankful for everything she's done for me. And you reminded me of it. So thank you for that. But what's your favorite technology that you're leveraging today in your life? Could be for work, could be for personal, but what's your favorite technology today?
I'm trying to disconnect as much as possible because I'm really attached to everything. I have like 3 screens in front of me, the phone. We are very lucky to contact our offices and etc. in the same minutes, sometimes within seconds, so we can apply our customers. And I'm trying almost 2-3 hours a day without phone, and I'm walking my dog. But I recently got like a smartwatch, which I like to track my walk. I'm trying to walk 3 or 4 miles a day. And that's a good thing. So I can leave my phone home. So nobody really disturbs me. They don't call me. I'm trying to not turn on my phone first 45 minutes to 50 minutes in the morning, and then lost 30 minutes. And then my dog somehow gained some weight, and I'm trying to make him lose weight. So that's why I start like counting. So it's not work related. It's more like activity related, but I think I like my watch right now.
I think Excellent. That's awesome. You're almost doing reverse technology.
It's kind of a conflict what I was talking about 10 minutes ago, but that's work.
The second question that we ask everyone is, there's lots of trends out there. Has there been something in your past, personal or work, that has just blown your mind and kind of changed the way that you think of things moving forward?
It could be like a very general answer, but I think traveling, I would say. When I was 7-8 years old, our teacher would have asked us like an essay, who would know better? Like the person travels more or the person who reads more? I'm very lucky to travel more than maybe 50 to 60 countries so far. And I think that is the one thing that really changed my life. And I think I'm becoming more open-minded. I'm trying every day because we have a team of people, like probably 10 different nationality, 15 different languages, a lot of religion, language. I think it's important being open-minded, especially today's world. I think travel did change me a lot, and I'm trying to touch people around me. I'm trying to be a good leader and helping people to achieve their dreams. I think traveling helped me a lot with my life and being more open-minded. I was thinking 20 years old, very different. I was like, oh, I'm the best. When I start traveling, I'm like, I don't know anything in the world. So I think that was very, very impressive for me to see how world is amazing. And sitting down with people on a beach that I don't speak any language. It happened in Philippines, and these guys like offered us like coconuts and cooked banana, and then that was like a great experience. I could never do that without traveling.
Jeez, Liz, this is like the best podcast we've had in a while.
I know, it's really been
disrespect
fun.
To the others, but
I hope you're not saying that to everyone else.
No, I feel bad for the people. Yeah. This has been a bright spot in my week, Burak. I really
thank you so
appreciate
much.
you.
Same. I really enjoy my afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, we hope to talk with you again soon. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Next Level Supply Chain with GS1 US. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to our feed and explore more great episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share and follow us on social media. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.